Dave, and Rupert Lowe, who we're going to get on next week, he put out a tweet yesterday, I think it was, to say that thanks to figures that he's managed to obtain from the Home Office, something like 450,000 houses have been supplied to immigrants over the past 10 years or so, and that's what you might call affordable housing. So therefore, I suppose, you know, secure housing, public housing, that kind of thing, cheap housing, basically. 450,000 homes to immigrant families. You know, James Price is here. I mean, it's a ridiculous situation, isn't it?
It's absolutely extraordinary. So if you take that last year, we had a net migration increase. So of all the people who entered the country minus all the people who left the country, we went up by 800,000 people.
Yeah.
By the way, when you poll the public and you ask them how many people they think come in a year, they sort of guess at about 70,000.
Yeah, right.
So they're more than 10 times lower than they should be.
Well, one of the things that they boasted about yesterday, before the announcement of what Starmer's new plan was, and his 59 minutes of absolute boredom, was that they've deported 9,400 people, which is literally 1% of the net migration figure from the past 12 months alone.
Right, extraordinary. Well, yeah, less than. And so if you have that 800,000 people join, and we built about 80,000 houses.
Yes.
So unless these people are living 10 to a house, which they're not, where are they all going? And as you say, what's actually starting to happen is it looks like the government is starting to buy up housing to be given to these people. Now, not only is that being paid for by our money, that's being paid for by people who can't afford to buy those houses themselves. And when you don't build enough houses, more people join, and the government starts buying more of them, what happens to the price of the remaining houses? It shoots up massively.
Shoots up massively.
That's why so many of us will never be able to afford a home at this point.
Absolutely right. Nick says this: I've tried the hairdryer trying to evaporate condensation, but not set in damp. Yeah, I mean, any maniac who thinks that you can approach some damp in a wall with a hairdryer, such as Keir Starmer does, I mean, forget about it. Also, of course, let's talk about last night's Question Time, because I think a Rubicon has been crossed. I watched it last night. Nigel Farage was on it alongside Alistair Campbell, Jackie Smith, and
Kevin
Hollinrake, And Nigel Farage basically took the place by storm. And unusually, actually, the audience was with him as well. And I thought it was a real, you know, change in the mood of the nation, if you like, because you know what Question Time's like. Normally, it's absolutely chock full of Labour activists who are constantly, you know, booing and hissing, and they hate anybody right-wing. And, I mean, they actually liked Nigel Farage. Have a look at what he had to say about Starmer's speech.
So I sat and watched and listened to Keir Starmer's speech, and I was very pleased with myself. I managed to stay awake right until the very end, which, given how bland the delivery was, how scripted the whole thing was, how lacking in any sense of emotion or message delivery, was remarkable. The 6 milestones doesn't even mention immigration, the boats, or anything. And I actually genuinely think that the milestones will become millstones as they fail on every single one of them.
And there was a big round of applause for him after that, and it's true. I mean, by the way, talking of stop the boats, I saw a great meme the other day after the government accidentally banned porridge from the junk food ads, and it was stop the oats. Yeah. Brilliant.
It's extraordinary.
It really is. Yeah. And when you've got this level of ridicule going on as a government, I mean, it can't last, because, you know, people are making fun of Keir Starmer now every single time he stands up to do anything. You know, how about this from Alan in Merseyside? Starmer, how to look silly without even trying. 5 aims and nothing about migration. The first 3 questions from the media were about migration. The media and the people get it. Starmer doesn't. He's not worthy of his position. And that's the point, you know, migration, immigration, single biggest issue. We've been talking about it here at Talk for something like 5 or 6 years. It took the BBC about 4 years to catch up. So even for them, it's become quite a big subject.
Yeah, well, look, the reason that immigration became so much of a big deal and so unpopular started in the Blair days.
Yes.
When Tony Blair came in 97, they opened the floodgates, really. And you got some people in the right, in the Labour Party, the right of the Labour Party, so no, we're going to do it anyway. We're going to rub the right's noses in multiculturalism, right? That was, I think, a direct
But they also deported
quote.
A lot more people than the Tories were doing in the back end of the last government.
Yeah, they did do that. But then the numbers we were getting in the early days of the coalition under David Cameron was something like 300,000 net increase a year.
Yeah.
And at that point, Cameron was saying, right, I'm going to get this down to the tens of thousands.
Yeah.
Never did it because we were inside the European Union, and therefore we couldn't stop anybody.
Yeah.
We get out of the European Union just in time for Boris, "Oh, Boris," to come along and open the floodgates. And so you're seeing numbers now that no country has ever seen.
Because he was a great believer in immigration, wasn't he?
But again, there's immigration and there's immigration, right? My missus is American. She works in the city, she pays loads of tax, her family all ancestrally come from these islands. That's a bit different to someone who's never been here before, from a totally different culture. Who's
turning up with 15 members of his family. So they can all move into a house somewhere in Newham. You know, it's a bit different. So, let's go back to question time last night. And yes, another surprise, they actually found an audience member who had something to say about asylum that didn't mean bring everybody in.
As far as asylum goes?
I don't believe in any asylum. I really don't. I think we have taken more than our fair share in this country. I feel very sorry for the little towns, little villages that these people have been put, where people have lived all their lives, and they're frightened.
But do you feel sorry for the people who are fleeing war? Do you feel sorry for people fleeing persecution?
I think there's far too much made of this, that they're fleeing wars.
OK.
Right. All right. Jackie, you want... Thank you. Thank you.
Is there a war in Algeria? Is there a war in Morocco? Is there a war... Where are they coming from? Well, Syria?
That's the thing. And you can see Alistair Campbell there trying to be sort of, you know, holier than thou and sort of go, look, she's just that bigoted woman, you know, taking us all the way back to Gordon Brown. But in fact, she was cleverer than he was because she asked the question, is there a war in Algeria? No. Is there a war in Morocco? No. Whereas a lot of countries where the people are coming from, in fact, one of the reasons that the Home Office and the Border Force is so useless is that a lot of people are coming here now claiming they're from Eritrea, where there is a war, except they're not from Eritrea, they're from Morocco. And because they don't know the difference between people from either of those countries, they let them all in, go, oh, you're Eritreans, no problem, in you come.
Yeah, it's absolutely extraordinary. And, of course, Alistair Campbell trying to act like he's got any kind of moral arbiter status in this at all, given what he did to destabilise the world, is probably more vicious than almost anybody else.
I mean, you might argue that the Blair invasion inspired by George Bush of Iraq caused an awful lot of this problem.
Right, absolutely.
I think you could say that. And let's have a look at another audience member. Incredibly, 2 in a row. This one actually likes Donald Trump.
Just an observation, really. I mean, Trump's been elected into the US to be leader of the free world, and they seem so buoyant. He's hit the ground running. I mean, over here, our government just hit the ground. It seems a complete contrast.
Okay. That's there in the red tie.
Jackie Smith didn't look too happy there.
Face like thunder. No.
I mean, this is the trouble. Their faces all look like thunder because they know it's going horribly wrong. I love that. We're going to have to use that. You know, they didn't hit the ground running, they just hit the ground.
Just hit the ground. What's happened in the United States is that Donald Trump, again, very flawed guy, we can all make jokes about him, blah, blah, blah. But he had 4 years inside government, got the economy going absolutely gangbusters, didn't manage to deal with a lot of the structural problems that I've banged on about that are also a problem here. So his plan this time around, he understands what needs to be done. That's why people like Elon Musk have come in and talked about this Department of Government Efficiency to cut away all the bad legislation, all the unaccountable bureaucrats, all these arm's-length bodies, all the rest of it. So he knows that heading into that, he's going to be able to cut all of that nonsense away. So not only will the economy get going again, but he'll be able to do all the other things that he's been elected to do, whether that's deport the 20-odd million illegal migrants who are there. Whereas here in the UK, we've had the government come in, they haven't got a clue about any of this, and they're only just starting to discover now that they are unable to do any of the things they actually want to do because the system is set up to stop them.
Yeah, interesting. Let's see what Nigel Farage had to say last night on Elon Musk.
Elon.
And the closeness, that Alice described, the potential, the conflict of interest.
Yeah, he's very interested in British politics.
Why is he so interested?
The reason he trolls Keir Starmer is because Elon believes in free speech, and Keir Starmer locks people up who say nasty things on Facebook. So that's
There's Campbell again trying to deny it. Well, it's true, though, and the audience believe it to be true. The audience are clapping Nigel Farage. I've never seen anything like it. You know, honestly, it's the first time I've ever watched Question Time and was, like, cheering along with the audience.
And Reform yesterday, I think in a first poll, have overtaken Labour for the first time.
So they're in second place behind the Conservatives by about 1 or 2 points, right?
Yeah, and it means that if you combine the Conservative and the Reform vote, you'd look, if they're in election tomorrow, you'd have a pretty healthy majority for the pair of them. So does that mean that in a few years' time, if the Conservatives don't pull away and destroy Reform, are we looking at a coalition?
No,
are we looking at Reform taking in first place?
I think reform will take over. I think I would say before Easter, you'll see reform as number one in the poll, and you'll see the Conservatives sort of dropping back, because I was talking to some people last night at a party in Westminster, very sort of inside the Beltway type party, and lots of right-wingers there talking as if they didn't realise that the Conservative Party's kind of dead. You know, they're sort of talking about, well, we've got to regroup and we've got to, you know, find a way of producing this, you know, this kind of future that we can all do. And somebody said, you know, it's a bit like 1974. It feels like, you know, we need a Thatcher figure in 5 years' time. And I just went, well, the only Thatcher figure there is on the right is Nigel Farage. You know, the Tories haven't got one. And so the idea that they think they can just come back in 5 years' time, promising to rebuild the economy and fix what Labour have messed up, I think they're deluded about it. I just don't think they get it. I think the Tory party might be finished.
Of course, that's what was said in the 1970s, and Jim Callaghan and Harold Wilson, all these people thought that, oh, it's fine, we're going to win now that this Thatcher woman, she hasn't got a clue. Yeah. And she did spend a few years having to learn and to grow in opposition. Yeah. Again, I'll bang on about it, but she had some very clever people around her who sat down and did the hard thinking.
People around her,
and work out what the problems were. The problems in that case, everything came back to inflation and to trade union power. Right. So they had a bit of a plan when you get into government, how you fix that. Yeah. Do the Tories have that? Are they going to have the ability to work it out? Do Reform have that ability? Because they've got Farage, who's a superstar.
Reform have got a long way to go, I get that. But the problem for what happened in the 70s, I remember this because I was there, is that the Labour government basically kiboshed themselves, because by the end of it, there were so many strikes going on that nothing could be done. And so people didn't really have any faith in them anymore, because they thought, well, if you can't control the unions, we need somebody who can. And that was when Thatcher suddenly grabbed hold of that particular issue and went, we'll fix it for the unions and we'll make sure they can't do this ever again.
Exactly. And I suspect that our version of that in the 2020s is going to be immigration. Yeah. In fact, you've got, as we say, legal migration in the 800,000 range, which is just completely bonkers. And people now on the left defending that, right? Yes. So they've so crossed over the Rubicon, they think that's normal and this is acceptable, and they don't see the kind of cultural damage that's going to happen.
And again, I said this to one of the former Labour advisors I was talking to yesterday, you know, it's all very well saying in 5 years' time the NHS won't have any waiting lists. Well, how many more people do you think are going to be living here in 5 years' time? If it carries on like this, it'll be nigh on another 4 million.
Yeah, absolutely right. And with the legislation,
you won't be able to get near the hospital, never mind get in for an actual operation.
Yeah, quite. You know? Well, and you won't be able to kill enough old people fast enough. That's something the legislation will be trying to do.
No, exactly right. Let's get a voice note from Brian on Sadiq Khan.
Morning, Mike. From the South End. I'm fuming this morning. I really am. Who on earth nominated that Khan to get a knighthood? That's disgusting. He's taken London, which was one of the greatest cities in the world, our city, and turned it into a cesspit. You know, perhaps he should ask the parents of all those teenagers who have died through stabbings and shootings over the years under his watch, you know, whether they think he deserves a knighthood. He's taken the transport system onto the verge of bankruptcy. You know, he's destroyed the roads. He's destroyed this city, and someone in their right mind decides to give him a knighthood. Give it a rest, for Christ's sake.
Yeah. I feel your pain, Brian, and this is the same government, of course, that will be giving Sue Gray a seat in the House of Lords as well. I mean, the idea of giving Sadiq Khan a knighthood is, as Brian says, completely and utterly ridiculous.